Hi everybody, today we are sitting down with Johnny LeBlanc. He's actually my sensei at karate. So I do train Kyokushin here in Moncton and also Diani. So I can't wait for you guys to know a little bit more about Johnny, his story, and why he's such a great leader for our community and especially for the next generation. Hi Johnny, how's it going?
Hello.
So yeah?
Yeah,
It's pretty exciting to have you sit down with me and for me to kind of pick a little bit your brain and know a little bit more about you. Because obviously I see you at the dojo, but it's kind of different to have you sit down and learn a little bit more about who is Johnny LeBlanc, my sensei. So when did you start karate actually?
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I started karate in 1982 when I was 10 years old. And my first sensei was a man named Ron Cormier. And I trained with him close to 10 years. Then after that, I moved to Vancouver when I was 21. And then I got a second sensei, Japanese sensei named Tatsuji Nakamura. Yeah. So that's when I really learned a lot about the style and the tradition and everything that goes behind the martial art, which is Kyokushin Kaikan.
Mm-hmm. Where does it come from, the Kyokushin?
Kyokushin is a Japanese fighting art, so it comes from Japan. Mm-hmm. Martial arts originate in China, but then moved to Japan, Okinawa. That's where karate started.
Yeah, so the founder of Kyokushin is
a Korean person. His Japanese name is Matsutatsu Oyama, and his title is Sosai. He is a creator of Kyokushin, which is known to be the strongest karate in the world.
Wow.
It was the first style to become full contact.
Wow, that's incredible. So you've traveled the world. And you're like this fighter who's been like pretty incredible. And obviously, as a student, like I've watched a few of your videos on YouTube and your fights. And it kind of like, it memorized me. Like, I'm like, wow, like, I feel like you don't feel anything at that moment. Is it like a training? Is it like, what's your mindset when you get there?
It has a lot to do with the fighting spirit. And training is hard. Every day we train 2-3 times a day, lots of body conditioning. So during the matches, you don't feel the hits too much. But then sometimes the next day, of course, you start to feel the damage that you took, right? Especially the higher level tournaments. You face a lot of strong opponents.
Wow, that's incredible. Like, what was one of the matches that you remember right now? Like, it's something that every time you think about, you're like, this is one of them that I've learned a lot from.
There was many matches that I remember and that were hard to win or sometimes I would lose. I fought world champions, but the one fight that I remember the most was against this Brazilian. His name was Anderson da Silva, not Anderson Silva that you know from the UFC, but Anderson da Silva, and he's at the time light heavyweight champion from Brazil. So we had such a grueling match. It went into 2 extension rounds. So the fight with no break lasted about 10 minutes. And we tried hard to beat each other until the end. So that is probably the match that I remember the most.
And what was the response of your sensei after that match?
At the end of that fight, after the 3 rounds, there was 2 judges that voted for me and 2 judges that voted for him. And then the Japanese referee gave the Brazilian the decision. But he is the usual winner of that world tournament. He always finishes top 4. Okay. So I was pretty happy. Even though I lost the fight, I gave it everything I had. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have any regret, even though I lost the fight.
That's amazing because like when you go there you're pretty much like, you push yourself to go someplace that you've never been before, right? You don't know how it's gonna go. So I always felt like, do you feel like you're kind of already feel like a winner already before even being there? Because you're kind of doing something that not a lot of people in this world is capable of doing.
Well, I have a lot to owe to my coach, my Japanese coach, Shion Tatsuji Nakamura. With all the training that I did, and I would train so hard for months and months before a tournament. And then when I got there, I believed so much in the work that I did. There was nothing left, and I was ready to fight. Mentally, physically, I was ready. So I didn't feel too nervous.
Wow, that's great though. Like, do you feel like he, at the beginning when he was training you, that you felt like, oh my God, he's too hard on me, like what is he doing this for? And then do you feel like now it kind of made you the person that you are? Like, is there like an example that you felt at the beginning when he was training you that you were like, what is this for? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, like I said, I started karate when I was younger in New Brunswick here. But, and then I stopped Kyokushin for a few years, but when I started with Tatsuji Nakamura, I thought to myself, oh, in a couple of years, maybe I'll go for the Canadian Championships. That was my first thought when I joined the dojo. But after a couple of months, he had other things in mind. And then just 2 years later, I found myself fighting in Japan, representing North America at the World Open. So he saw a lot more potential in me than I saw in myself. So the reason I believed into myself is because he believed in me. So that helped a lot.
Wow, is that like one of the biggest reason you, because you are a sensei here in New Brunswick, yes. And you have a few dojos like here in Moncton, Dieppe, Kokhang and Memramcook. You have a lot of kids there. Is that the reason why you feel like you want to bring them into a level of believing in themselves and having discipline? And you know, like, you're not, example, like we do karate with you, the whole yes. family, the four of us, my partner Dave, Nico, and EJ. And when we come to dojo, I'm not a mom. There's no mom, there's no dad. You are saying, sensei says something, it's us, you do it, right? And it's kind of special to have that and have somebody that wants to give discipline, wants to bring something special to the new generation. Do you feel because of your sensei being like that with you, you want to give that to the young kids that you're training right now?
While I was training with my teacher, I actually, after a couple of years, he asked me to become his apprentice. And during the week, I would have to help him teach like after school kid classes. Yeah. So it was never my plan to become a karate teacher one day. I was just happy competing in tournaments and enjoying training in that martial art. And without me realizing, it was like being in the University of Kyokushin, because I was his apprentice. So I learned how to teach just like how they teach in Japan. Okay. So because of those years of being his apprentice, I learned how to teach the way he does. So everything that I teach to my students, it roots from what I learned from him.
And I think that's pretty special because do you feel like it kind of you're in the middle of the way this generation kind of disciplined their kids and the way like you grew up being taught by your sensei how to do it? Do you feel like sometimes it's hard for you to try to feel like a middle of it? Like, yeah, you don't want to be too hard because of the parents, but then at the same time, you know what hard work and discipline can bring to the kids and what it can help them grow. Like, do you feel like you're kind of like uncertain how sometimes to deal with certain things?
Well, now I have more experience. I've been teaching in New Brunswick now for close to 14 years. Mm-hmm. But the first couple of years I was teaching, it wasn't that long after I stopped the tournament circuit. So in my mind, I was still kind of a fighter and not really an experienced teacher yet. So I think those first couple of years, I was a bit too strict with my students. And then what happened is, if it's too strict for kids, they start to lose interest. So after a few years, I learned that I have to kind of find a happy medium. So strict, okay, but not too strict. But as they become my student for a few years, then I start to tolerate less things from them, and I expect more from them.
Yeah. Right? Is there like a few students right now that you've been hard on them, obviously because they've been with you for a long time, and you know how you can push them to become what they want to become?
Yes, I have. After 14 years of teaching around here, I've built up quite a few national level fighters and North American level and even international level. Specifically, there is two of them. One named Krizat Alogo. He's been training with me since 2011. And actually, he has competed in almost all the same tournaments that I've done myself. And he became North American lightweight champion, and he represented North America in Japan 2 times at world events. So I'm pretty proud of that. And also, I have a really strong junior that started with me when he was young. He's, I think, 17 now. But back in 2019, before the pandemic, he won all the tournaments around North America. So I decided to bring him up to the next level. So he fought in the World Junior Championships in Japan. And he actually moved up to the top 8 in the world. So that is something that I didn't accomplish at his age. So, his potential is unlimited.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's like something to obviously be very proud of. And do you feel like it's kind of, when they win, you win every time?
Exactly. That is the feeling I get after 3-4 months of training them and working on techniques and different things, defense or striking, counterattacks. And then when I see it come out in the matches and it works for them, then I'm very proud, of course, that our game plan has worked and those techniques became effective, actually.
No, that's great. It's really interesting. For you, like, if you kind of would go back to your young self right now, what would you tell yourself at that? Like, from what you've learned right now, from the person that you are, and the young kid who started karate at 10 years old, who probably did not want, did you felt like you wanted to go to karate all the time, or it was like?
I wanted to go to karate all the time. That's how I was.
Really?
Yeah. I've always been like that with sports. I used to do Olympic wrestling and football, hockey, and I always enjoyed the combat sports, and it's something I wanted to do every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's pretty interesting. So what would you tell that young Johnny now today?
Probably not to stop karate when I was 21 for a few years, because that was a time in my life that I could have dedicated myself to those few years of training where I could have achieved more. But there was a break a few years before I restarted Kyokushin. So you're not young forever, right? No. So I stopped fighting at 36.
Okay. Wow.
So I decided that was enough.
Yeah. But it's like, is it like a moment that now you kind of wish you would have done more, or you feel like you kind of did a lot, right? You, where are the places that you've traveled and you won right now? Like, what is the?
Of course, my teacher, he wanted me to become world champion, but it's so hard to become world champion, right? So I did my best and I did what I could, and I achieved a few titles. I was a 2-division North American heavyweight champion. I finished top 16 in the world 3 times, and one time I placed 6th in the world after 3 fights, lost to the world champ by decision. So I look back and I think, is there anything more that I could do? Maybe if I didn't stop Kyokushin for those 5-6 years when I was in my early 20s, maybe I could have accomplished more. And but I'm pretty happy with what I've done, right? What my results were. I'm pretty happy.
Oh, you should be proud of yourself for going that far. Like, again, there's not many people in the world that can say that they've done that, right? Let's talk about when you started back karate. You were a black belt before. So you started again, you had to go back to a white belt?
Actually, I didn't have to go back to white belt, but I got like a junior black belt when I was 15.
Yeah.
That was back in 1988. I did my belt test in Montreal. And I trained until I was 20 years old. So I stopped Kyokushin for about 6 years. So when I joined Tatsuji Nakamura, he was directly from Japan, and I started training, and he saw that I forgot a lot of the katas and stuff because I didn't practice for several years, right? So I kind of, he asked me, are you going to be comfortable wearing the black belt in front with me? And at that time, I didn't care about belts or whatever. I was just happy to train with this coach that I heard about so much. So I was ready. I said, Sensei, I don't care about belts. I'm going to start white belt again. So I started over because it wasn't my plan to be the teacher or anything. I was just happy about the training. So I wanted to learn kind of from scratch, like the traditional way that, you know, he's from Osaka, Japan. So it was definitely different than what I learned originally in New Brunswick. So he made me skip a few of the belts because of my past experience. But I did quite a few belt tests and then finally achieved black belt again, I think in 2007.
Okay. I think it's kind of like, I love the mindset of, it's not the color of your belt, right? I really appreciate that because the thing is, like, sometimes somebody sees the color of the belt and they think that person is not strong enough or they're better because they have a higher belt. But then when you fight together, it's like, ooh, never mind. This person is very strong. So I love the fact that you don't focus on belts. You focus on techniques, and they have to, they have to be good and they need to be proud of themselves too. And when you wear either, if it's the white belt, orange belt, the green belt, you wear it proud, right? Yes. And you push yourself every single time. And that's something that I've learned, obviously, in karate is like, you have to fight like if you were like kind of in a tournament, right? You have to think about, and I think you share that many times, you have to think it's like judges are watching you right now, right? Why do you feel like every time you have to like, not every time, but I mean like, why do you feel like people need to have that mindset of like, make sure like somebody's watching you. Let's say like if the judges were there watching you, don't fight just in talking with a friend, fight like you're really fighting. Why do you feel like that you need to switch the mindset of people?
About the belts and the color of belts, it just represents your rank in the class or in the organization. So belts are achieved with time in the training, and you have to go and do some tests, like you have to do a certain amount of fights. You have to prove that you know the techniques, the terminology, kata, irogeko, kihon basics, and that's when you move up to the belt color, right? Yeah. But the real proof of the fighting, or to show that you're strong, is fighting in tournaments. Yeah. It's not the belt that you wear around your waist, right?
Yeah, that's so true. No, I really appreciate that. Like, I feel like it's, and I tell that to everybody, it's like you really have to have a different type of mindset to love karate. And our family, we definitely love karate.
That's
and
good.
We love the fact that you pushes us. Like, we go for an hour, and the way that we explain to people is when you go to dojo, you're not yourself anymore. You know, you kind of give Sensei everything that you have. If he says you do 50 push-ups, you try to do your 50 push-ups, right?
Yes.
Even if it's hard, especially for me. But at the end of that hour, you feel so good. You feel so empowered. You're like, oh my God, I did this. Like, I thought I was gonna puke 45 minutes ago, but my God, it feels so good, right? And then you go home and you kind of like debrief about what happened at karate. Like, that's what we do, like driving in the car, that the four of us back going home. It's like kind of a debriefing of like, oh my God, this was so awesome. Did you see that technique? Like, we should practice this. And the kids are like, oh yeah, that was like so cool. But it's like such a huge thing. It's so beautiful, the connection that it gives you. When you go to dojo and the people that you see there is like a huge family, right?
Yes.
You learn so much from one another. When I'm sparring against Krizat, he's teaching me a lot, right?
Yes.
He's always pushing me, and I'm like, I can't push anymore. He's like, yes, you can. And then I'm like, okay, I did it, right? Yeah. And even with Senpai Jeremy, like there's always like something they're teaching you, and they're showing you different techniques. And then I always said, if you take what everybody's teaching you and you put it in one little box, you will have like one unstoppable person, right? Right. Having your techniques, having Senpai Krizat speed, like he's so fast, and how he does, and with the way he thinks, and like it's pretty incredible. And I'm so proud and very grateful that my kids are growing to be in your dojo. And I hope more parents are gonna put their kids in dojo, because I feel like it's gonna bring them, it's not just about the fighting, it's about, again, the discipline, the respect, exactly. Right? And it's not just about tournaments, but it's a lot more that they can take into the real life. So I very, very much appreciate what you're doing to our community and what you're bringing to our kids. And I feel like one day I'm gonna sit there and see Ija or Nico fighting and older and be like, yeah, my Sensei Johnny LeBlanc made me the person I am today. And I can see that. I can see them keep going, because you're strict on them, but it's a good way, in a good way. And we as parents, we obviously, me and Dave, we respect that very much, what you're doing, what you're teaching our kids.
Thanks very much.
So thank you so much for that, and keep doing what you're doing. And again, like I can't wait to know in a year from now what I'm gonna become. You know, like again, sometimes the thing I don't underestimate somebody, right? So it's pretty.
The dojo is a kind of spiritual moment. Like you can have a lot of stress in your life from work or school or whatever is going on in your life. But once you enter the dojo for the training, it's kind of a spiritual experience. You kind of forget all your problems, or it's a kind of an escape for that hour, right? Or hour and a half that you're doing during the training. And your body is actually much more capable than what your mind tells you what you can do. Mm-hmm. So you discover that in the training. And just to answer your question earlier about fighting in tournaments and not talking to people or judges before your fight, so that's what I prepare my fighters for, to just focus and relax before they compete, right? And don't maybe socialize so much to get distracted on the main goal. So after the competition, then you can be friends with whoever, right? And socialize.
Yeah, different. It's great. I mean, again, it's like such a different mindset, and you push yourself, and you don't know that, again, you don't think that you can do that. It's kind of different from going to the gym for an hour and a half, and you're like doing your time, and you're like doing, oh, this is good, I'm sweating a little bit, you know? You come to dojo 15 minutes after, you're like, what is this? Like, I was soaking wet. And then you push and like, oh my God, I can't go. And you hear everybody like pushing themselves, and we hear you going, go, come on, you got this. I have 15 minutes. That honestly, we love you very much, but 15 minutes for you is like 30 minutes. But it's okay, because the thing is, like, that's the most interesting, and sometimes we talk about it when we debrief as a family going home, is like when Sensei says, okay, 2 minutes to go, and then you're like shadowboxing or you're sparring, and you look at him and he's talking to a parent, you're like, this is not gonna be 2 minutes.
Sometimes 2 minutes turn into 5 minutes.
5 minutes. But then you're like, wow, that was great. And again, you're like, oh, that was actually good, because it was more than you thought you could do, right? So now, even myself, I do that at the gym now. I'm like, okay, just like 3 more. Then I'm like, oh, no, 3 more. Maybe another 2 more. Maybe 2 more. Mm-hmm. And then I push myself.
Kyokushin spirit.
Yes, exactly. So you push yourself and you push yourself. And then when you're done, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that I could do it that much, you know? Yeah. So like, I really very much appreciate that. Like, you don't know, like it kind of, it has a thing on somebody when you're like, at the end of the day, you're like, wow, I did all that. I didn't even know I was capable of doing this, right? So it's a total different mindset, and it's very important, because it's not just your body, it's your mind that you have to train to say that you can do it. Thank you everybody for watching. Kyokushin is not a sport, it's the way of life. Stay tuned for the next speaker. See you next time.